when you're able to basically explain something back to someone better than they're able to explain it, and they're like in the business of delivering that thing, that was the kind of the epiphany that I was chasing over and over again. And in doing that, in basically trying to create a lead gen system for that business, I started a Twitter and an Instagram account where I would take ideas that resonated and turn them into these visuals. So it'd be a book I was reading, or there's a few people who were like really influential at the beginning of that journey. Naval Ravikant, the founder of AngelList, Nassim Taleb. I was reading all of their stuff voraciously. And to remember it and put it into practice, I would make these visuals to accompany those ideas. And that initially served as this lead gen for people who'd be like, oh, that's cool. Can you do this for my, programmatic hedge fund? And like this like 40-page document. And it wasn't actually until I kind of outgrew the service component of that business that I got introduced to the world that we're here talking about. So the step between that was this went from a service business to a product business. I built a design curriculum, and that kind of took over from the service work in the short term, where I just focused on putting stuff out on Instagram and Twitter, and that would build this network of people that wanted to learn this very specific strain of design, which was take an idea, turn it into a diagram, communicate something way more simply, and stuck at that for probably 2 years through the pandemic. That was really a massive inflection point, right? Everyone's at home trying to pick up a new skill, trying to figure out what's going on, how to like almost go fully remote, or how to use the internet to communicate what you're good at. Because as soon as you lose that in-person connection, like for a lot of people, it really reduces your ability to show what you can do, explain what you're interested in and good at. So that got a lot of traction during that point in time, and it was through building that network that there's probably 3,000 or 4,000 people in a Discord at the end of that period, and a couple people reached out to me like, "Hey, have you seen? Do you know what an NFT is? Like, you've been making digital art for 3 years, and I would love to collect it." And I was just like, at the time, I was like, what is this guy talking about? And he sent me a link to OpenSea. I remember going on OpenSea, I was like, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. This is like probably $5 CryptoPunk era, maybe not $5, $500 CryptoPunk era. And I remember seeing OpenSea. I was like, oh, there's something here, but I don't get it. And it took about 6 months later for me to see Foundation.
Did you understand the difference between OpenSea and, let's say, DeviantArt? Because everyone was doing art, but like, what did you understand what that?
At that point in time, I don't think, not distinctly, no. Not distinct, because I didn't understand the underlying rails of it at all. And there's some commercial component to DeviantArt, I think. Like, there's commissions happening there, and there's like transfer of value happening on some of those networks, but I did not dig into the nuance of it. Like, I fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in 2017 as a function of getting a hedge fund as a client that explained it to me. So that was I met this guy actually who was buying Bitcoin through the post at the beginning. This must have been 2009, 2010. He was sending $1 in the post for 1 Bitcoin, and he started this fund. And this is a long story, but the guy's obviously done incredibly well. And I got introduced to that world, and that was the extent of my knowledge at the time. Like, I didn't dig past Bitcoin as an idea, and so it wasn't immediately obvious to me when I saw OpenSea what was going on. It wasn't until somebody sent me an invite to Foundation, if you know that auction platform, the one-of-one auction platform, which I think tied it all together as like, this is just very obviously a digital curated gallery experience, auction house, all of those things. So that would have been March 2021 when I started minting my work as one-of-ones, and more specifically just started to apply that visualized value discipline, idea, process to the technology itself. So all of the pieces that did well in 2021 were really ways to explain the phenomenon that was happening at the time. So it's this very meta commentary on the actual underlying principles of the space.
And it must be quite exposing at first, because now, you're not pitching to a client, you're not doing what you did, you're now just putting something out there and seeing, does it create value to somebody else? How was that process?
What's fascinating is I had a distinct advantage in that because of the network that I'd built up prior. And I think because the ideas that were interesting to me and the people that I was reading were so heavily concentrated in technology, venture capital, markets, all of these ideas basically became this magnet for people who appreciate those things. So what was interesting is I can't remember the exact sequence of events, but I kind of had the ability to tease that out before just jumping off the cliff as well, where I discovered what this technology is. I'm like, Visualize Value at the time probably has 200,000 Twitter followers. So the idea that I could say, would anybody be interested in collecting this stuff before making that leap? I mean, the result was absolutely astounding either way, but I think just retrospectively thinking about it, I had a massive advantage in the fact that basically the entire audience that had been following this journey was probably on a very similar trajectory and understanding and appreciating this stuff. So it wasn't like pivoting from this completely other world into what I think people would think of as this like value extraction. Hey, I'm now going to like take my painting, take a picture of it and upload it to Foundation or wherever it was. And one of my early collectors actually gave a really succinct explanation as to why he was interested in collecting one of the early pieces. On Instagram, there's this, if you click on a post on Instagram and go to the extra information, there's like view story reshares. And if you go to back in 2021, if you went to a post on Visualize Value and see how many times it had been shared, like propagated across the network, that was his collecting thesis at the time, was like that your ability to build and maintain a network is the thing that's interesting. And obviously these are chicken and egg things, like you're making work that people want to consume, but at the same time, there's this propagation happening almost naturally. So yeah, it didn't feel, I think there's definitely been this bifurcation of like people who are absolutely opposed to it and don't want to learn anything else about it, and people who are like completely down the rabbit hole. Right? It's a very Marmite situation.